You touch the outlet behind your couch and it's warm. Not hot, just warm. The kind you almost don't notice with your hand still half on the cushion. But warm plastic on an outlet cover means a connection somewhere behind that wall is already losing a fight against electrical resistance. And outlet connections are the exact failure point that made pre-1972 aluminum-wired homes 55 times more likely to reach fire hazard conditions than a copper-wired house. The actual fix costs about $5. Ignoring it can cost the house. Here's what's happening inside that wall. Electricity moving through a tight, clean connection barely makes any heat at all. Loosen that connection, even by a hair, and the current has to fight its way across a gap instead of flowing straight through. And that fight generates heat, the same way rubbing your palms together warms them faster than sliding them apart. Screw terminals back out over decades of expansion and contraction, every hot summer and cold winter the house has lived through. Push-in connections, the kind builders loved in the 70s because they went in twice as fast with a hand drill, back out even sooner than screws do. A house built in 1965 has had 60 years of seasonal swings to work every one of those connections loose, 1 degree at a time. Warm plastic under your palm is your one early warning. Homeowners rarely get a second one before the smell of hot dust in a wall cavity turns into something worse than a smell. That's the mildest failure on this ladder. It's also the most common, sitting quietly behind furniture in houses across the country tonight. Watch for the small signs that travel with it, things like a light that flickers when the dryer kicks on, a breaker that trips twice in 1 week for no obvious reason, or a faint burnt plastic smell near a switch plate that's gone by morning. None of those alone means the house is about to burn down, but together, in an old house, it's time to stop guessing. The next failure up doesn't announce itself as heat. It shows up as a shock. Walk into an older kitchen or bathroom and look closely at the outlets nearest the sink. If they don't have the small test and reset buttons built into the face, you're looking at a circuit with no ground fault protection, standing a few feet from running water. Ground fault protection, GFCI for short, became a code requirement near sinks, tubs, and outdoor outlets starting in the early 1970s. Code requirements aren't retroactive, though. Nobody tears open finished drywall to catch a 50-year-old house up to a rule that didn't exist when the crew wired it. So the outlet by your bathroom sink might be running on the same bare circuit your grandparents used, with nothing built in to trip in a fraction of a second the moment current finds a path through a person instead of a wire. A hairdryer, wet hands, and a house from 1968. An ordinary, unremarkable combination that still sends people to the emergency room every year. There's a cousin worth knowing too. AFCI, Arc Fault Protection, which watches for the sputtering, arcing kind of fault that starts fires inside walls rather than shocks at the outlet. Older panels usually have neither. A $5 plug-in tester tells you in about 10 seconds which one, if any, your outlet actually has. Keep climbing, and the hazard stops living quietly in the wall. It starts living out in the open, in your living room, in plain sight. Every extension cord snaking under a rug and every space heater plugged into the far end of one is a workaround for a house that doesn't have enough outlets where you actually need them. Cords and heaters were never built to be permanent wiring, but in an old house with too few outlets per room, they quietly become exactly that, for years at a stretch. Extension cords alone start an estimated 3,300 house fires a year in the US, with around 50 deaths tied to that number. Space heaters add another 1,700 or so fires annually, and roughly 80 deaths. Most of those ignite at night, per the CPSC's own data. The house is asleep, nobody's awake to catch the burning dust smell before it becomes flame. The instruction here is almost insultingly simple. Heaters go straight into a wall outlet, never into an extension cord or a power strip, because a heater draws enough current on its own to turn a thin cord into the exact resistance and heat problem your outlet was already flirting with upstairs, except now it's sitting directly on the carpet. Stack a season on top of that habit, and the ladder climbs again, right on schedule every winter. Old houses and holiday lighting are a rough combination. December is already the single worst month of the year for house fires nationwide, and now you're adding load to circuits that were already running marginal back in July. NFPA figures put holiday lights and decorative lighting at around 150 home fires a year on their own, and Christmas trees add a couple hundred more, with electrical failure involved in something like a third to nearly half of those, depending on which year's report you check. None of that means stop decorating. It means an old string of lights with a cracked plug, run through 2 or 3 more strings daisy-chained behind the couch, is landing on the same tired circuit that was already warm to the touch back in June. Inspect every cord before it goes up. Throw away anything frayed, cracked, or missing a prong. That's the entire ask, and it takes less time than untangling the lights in the first place. There's a rung above the seasonal one, and this one belongs to the whole house, not just a single room. Portable generators and EV chargers ask an old electrical panel to do something it was never designed to do, except a serious, sustained load pushed in from outside the system, or push power back out through it. A generator run without a proper transfer switch can backfeed the grid and electrocute a utility lineman blocks away who has no reason to expect a supposedly dead line to be live. Generators kill quietly, too, often well before they ever start a fire. Carbon monoxide from a generator running in an attached garage or parked too close to a window has caused a disproportionate share of poisoning deaths nationwide. CPSC data shows black households alone accounted for 186 of those generator-related CO deaths between 2011 and 2021. An EV charger is calmer by comparison, but it's still asking a panel installed in 1965 a question that panel usually can't answer safely on its own. That's exactly why having a licensed electrician check your panel's actual capacity before either device goes in isn't some optional extra layer of caution. It's the whole point of calling one in the first place, which brings the ladder to its top rung, the one that isn't so much a rung as the floor everything else here has been quietly standing on. If your house was built, or rewired, somewhere between about 1965 and 1973, there's a real chance the wire behind your walls isn't copper. It might be aluminum. Cheaper back then because copper prices spiked hard during those years, and it behaves nothing like copper once it's sitting inside a wall for decades. Aluminum expands and contracts more with every swing in temperature. It oxidizes at the surface in a way copper simply doesn't. Neither one helps. Both properties work directly against a tight, stable connection at an outlet or a switch. The CPSC's own field survey found that homes wired with old technology aluminum before 1972 are 55 times more likely to have at least one connection reach genuine fire hazard conditions than a comparable copper-wired home. That number isn't a lab estimate sitting in a drawer somewhere. On April 28, 1974, a house fire in Hampton Bays, New York killed 2 people, and fire investigators traced the cause directly to a single faulty aluminum wire connection at an outlet. 2 lives, 1 loose screw. If an inspector, or just your own gut, tells you the house might have aluminum branch wiring, the fix is not a fresh wire nut twisted on with a little extra hope. The CPSC recognizes exactly 2 permanent repairs, a copolymer crimp or an Alumicon connector, installed by someone trained specifically to do them, or a full rewire if the walls are already open for other reasons. Every other quick patch just resets the clock on the same failure, quietly, for another few years. Knob and tube wiring sits right beside it. Same top rung, different reason. It was never designed to sit buried under thick modern attic insulation, the way most old attics have since been retrofitted. It carries no ground wire at all, which means every device plugged into it is one fault away from having nowhere safe to send a stray current except through whatever happens to be touching it at the time. So say some of that turns out to be true of your house. The last piece on this list won't fix any of it upstream. It only buys you time if everything above it already has failed. A working smoke alarm cuts your risk of dying in a home fire by roughly 60%, according to NFPA's own research. Older studies found that around 40% of home fire deaths happened in houses with no working alarm present at all. Not a cheap alarm versus an expensive one. A working alarm versus a dead battery nobody replaced last year, or a unit 10 years past its service life sitting quietly on the ceiling doing nothing while it looks like it's doing something. Test it this month. Walk over, press the button. Listen for the sound, don't just glance up and assume it's fine. So here's the $5 fix the title promised, and it turns out to be smaller and bigger than it sounds at the same time. It's a plug-in outlet tester, the kind with 3 small lights on the face, sold at any hardware store for less than the price of lunch. Plug it into that warm outlet behind the couch. Plug it into the ungrounded one by the bathroom sink. Plug it into every outlet in every room you haven't checked once since the day you moved in. On its own, the tester fixes nothing. What it does is turn a vague, easy to shrug off feeling, that faint warmth under your palm, into a specific reading you can't talk yourself out of anymore. From there, the real fix is a phone call to a licensed electrician, not a trip back to the hardware store for wire nuts and a hope for the best. The tester costs $5. What it tells you to do next is the part that actually matters. Test the outlets tonight. All of them. See what those 3 little lights actually say. Maybe every single one comes back clean, and you've spent 10 minutes buying real peace of mind, instead of a guess you'd have carried around for another year. Or maybe one of them doesn't. Now you know something concrete about your own house that you didn't know an hour ago. Something you get to act on before it acts on you first. That's the whole question a warm outlet is asking you. Do you want to find out on your own terms, tonight, with a $5 tester and 10 spare minutes? Or do you want the house to eventually tell you the hard way, at 3 in the morning, with everyone already asleep? Either way, you're done guessing. If this walked you through something in your own walls you'd never actually checked before, there's a follow-up video on exactly what a licensed electrician looks for in the first 5 minutes of an old house inspection, and it starts with the same 3-light test you just ran.